All right. Hello, everybody. We are here with another episode of Business Acceleration Playbook, where we are bringing you the plays that you need to win in your business. I'm joined by the lovely, the talented, the brilliant Angela Buckley. We are missing Chanel Rose today. Chanel's had a little bit of a bad luck on a couple of things, so she's dealing with some personal stuff. I know that well. That saying, when it rains, it pours. Sometimes it rains, it pours. If I feel like things happen in, like, how they always say things happen in threes or something. Um,
Yes,
my grandma was always very superstitious with that. It didn't matter what it was. She would just be like, all right, we're going to
things
wait for the
happen in
next few things
threes.
to happen. Yeah, it's funny, but that's how it goes. And that is, honestly, it's part of life. Definitely a part of business ownership, but a part of life in general. And, I think it's good to think about all of those things, because today we're going to be talking about just our business foundation. So, when we think about the foundation of a house, if we don't get that right, the rest of the house is not going to be up to par, right? So I really wanted to take a little bit of time today and discuss these business foundations and the pieces that make that up. And I know Angela also, she's involved with her own business, but you also work a corporate job. And I'm sure your corporate job has their own business foundations that they have set in place. So I think it's important, no matter what size of business, if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or if you have a small business or a medium, large business, it doesn't even matter, because a lot of the core foundational pieces are actually the same.
It's a true statement. So, we actually have business regulations. When you get large enough, they're going to tell you what to do and they're going to come and audit you and check you to make sure you're doing that. But when you are smaller, your safety net is yourself at the beginning, right? Like you're completely relying on your skills, your wit, your ability to adjust, and your willpower to win, right? It's the size of the dog in the fight, not the size of the fight in the dog. It matters which one you're going to go after. So when you're smaller, you have a lot more leeway to operate. But unfortunately, the downside of that is that you generally have not protected yourself as well. And that protection and that foundation and the things that I like to talk about most, the structure systems, they at the beginning feel burdensome and expensive. But then somewhere you cross this line of efficiency and safety and mitigation, and how many entrepreneurs were just not prepared for COVID.
Oh,
I mean,
most of them. I mean, I don't know that any of us was 100% prepared. Some of us a little better than others, but
maybe,
yeah, I
but
don't.
like I don't
Yeah,
have I don't have continuation insurance in my small business,
yeah.
right? I
Well,
just don't. Like, and musicians who are gig employees, they have none of that, and many of them are not even eligible for unemployment because when you're a self-employed individual, there's just nothing. So,
yeah,
um, having the rainy day funds, having this planning, having an understanding of what business continuation insurance even looks like to help you get through these days. And some of this is expensive and some of it really isn't. But
yeah.
none of us
Well, I think
ever
that
expect
knowing
to
that it
use it.
exists is a big part, right? Because that's the
Hmm.
thing. I actually had never heard the term, that insurance term, the continuation. I realized
Business
I had
continuation.
it, but I didn't even know what it was. But I think that kind of goes back to, when you're thinking about your own foundational pieces, you need to think about, who are your people that's in that place. Like, I have my attorney that I trust with all that. I have my bookkeeper and my accountant that I trust with those segments. And then I have, my insurance agent that I trust with all of that, because I don't know all these, like, riders and all these things. I'm not an insurance agent. I have no desire to be an insurance agent. So you have to really figure out, now, first of all, what is it that you need? And, I knew I needed insurance. Now, all the different types of insurance, I had no idea until my insurance agent was like, oh, you're going to want this. Okay, what is this? And he painted the picture for me, but there's a few little things that kind of was looped into some stuff that I didn't even know that I had that existed. But he knew that, for such, you mentioned a small amount, for such a small amount, we're talking like pennies,
Yeah, you're talking like
that,
$5 a month or
yeah,
something on some of these things because
not much.
one, you never think you're going to need it, and the insurance companies are betting on the fact that you will have never need it. So it's low.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that's the key, even with, having an attorney. I actually had this conversation earlier with somebody, about why go ahead and retain an attorney. An attorney, you retain them before you need them. You retain an attorney that you have there. And I know it's going to feel like you're wasting $2,000, $3,000 or whatever their, retainer fee is, but I can guarantee you, if something ever happens, that's going to be the best $2,000 or $3,000 that you ever spent in your entire life. So for me, that I look at it like an insurance of sorts that, yeah, I'm paying this out in hopes that I never need it, right? Kind of like life insurance. Like nobody wants to use that.
You don't use Legal Shield? You don't use...
I have Legal Shield for my personal. I do have a Legal Shield policy for my business, but I still have an attorney of my own also. So because, yeah, I have, which, I mean, I can go into the details on that, but I know my personal lawyer, and he knows me. He knows all the fine little intricate details of my very complicated existence of all my business things. So for me, it's worth having that attorney that knows, that is local. My other attorneys are in Columbus, which is not far. It's less than 2 hours, but they don't know me personally. They don't know all the little fine details. So, I mean, where 30,000 foot view, a lot of the advice is going to be the same. Sometimes those fine little details are very important on some things. So I feel better having too much quote unquote insurance than not enough. So that's just for me. Gotcha. But,
so foundationally, one of the, a good place to start when we're talking about our business, I think you originally wanted to talk at some point about maybe business structure.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to mention.
Okay, but also then let's talk about how do you get the advice you need for your legal? And for me, like I do use Legal Shield just because it's an easy, simple policy to cover. I have it for both my business covering and my personal covering. And then talking to your insurance agent, like tell your insurance agent that you're in business. Ask them what they think you need. And if they're only selling personal insurance, that's possible. They clearly know somebody. The insurance agents are like some of the best networkers in the world. Learn how to network from your insurance agent.
Absolutely. They're really good.
ask for help. Tell them where you are. Tell them where you're starting. Tell them what your budget is. And let them, we used to say the fingers do the walking. Remember the yellow pages? But let them do some of that work for you and help and give you some of those suggestions and quotes and guidelines. You don't have to do all of this yourself. I think maybe that's the biggest thing, even as a solopreneur, that we could learn is that the help is out there. You simply have to put yourself out there and ask the questions.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people, I know when I first started looking for insurance for my business, I didn't even think of my insurance agent because he handles our house, our farm, our cars, but he's an independent agent. So he does lots of different companies. And I honestly just kind of like Googled basic business insurance and was like covering different things like that until I just happened to think, oh, I would love to move that more local. Let me see what he can do. And he looked at it. I was overpaying because I'm not an insurance agent. I don't know what I need. So I'm like aiming way up high. So he's asking me these questions like, well, what would it cost for you to replace this? And I'm giving the numbers. What would it cost for you to replace this? So he's adding it all up. And I had 10 times the amount of insurance that I needed. So I think, again, it's important to ask these people that are in that industry because, I was way overpaying on stuff and didn't even realize it. And, I do want to, let's go ahead and you mentioned structure. I do want to talk about structure only because we're talking about insurance, we're talking about legal and all the things too. And sadly, a very common mistake that I see happening with especially solopreneurs, like entrepreneurs, is that they have their business and their personal finances and structure completely smashed into one. Like they don't have a separate entity, right? They don't have an LLC or an S Corp or all that. And I'm not going to get into what you need because I don't know your personal situation, but I can tell you I've started all of mine as an LLC just because that's what I was more comfortable with and what met my needs. But, there are other options out there for you. But the key is that you want to separate it because, you got to think, always be in the back of your mind thinking liability. And if for some reason something ever happens within your business, no matter what type of business that you have, if you don't have your personal assets and finances separate from the business, if they sue your business, they also sue you.
Yes.
So, and that's terrifying when I see people that I'm like, okay, well, what do you have an LLC and an S Corp? I don't have neither. And it just like my heart, like it drops. And I just want to have a mini heart attack for them because that is so risky. And I mean, I know, Angela, you have a son, I have children. You know, the most terrifying thing that I can think of is to have everything that we have taken away and all of a sudden I have nowhere to go and nothing to do anything for my children with.
For my children, right.
Exactly.
Yeah, for my child.
If it was just me, yeah, it would suck. I could figure out something. I'm pretty resourceful. But when you have people you're responsible for, right, that's where it gets, you know, obviously more concerning. But, you know, I do think that's the very bare minimum. And, you know, some people have their attorney go ahead and set it up. If you want to do that, that's completely great. I did go ahead and set up my own just with Secretary of State, got my own EIN from the IRS, and then, you know, just gave it to my accountant and my attorney so they could, you know, do their magic because it wasn't difficult for me to do that. But some people get kind of nervous with that. So if you want to have your attorney do that, that's completely fine as well. Did you do your own too?
I did my own the first time.
And then you had somebody do it the second time?
Yeah, it's just like simpler. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and I don't think there's a right or wrong on it.
Well, I think part of growing up is hiring people to do their thing in their world of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely grew up Midwest, do everything yourself, big time do-it-yourselfer. But at some point, there's value in letting people do what they're good at.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I do. Only reason I like to tell the point that I did set my own myself is because that's one big hang up that I hear from people. Well, I don't have enough money to go ahead and hire an attorney to go ahead and get my LLC, you know, incorporated. And I know there are places like SCORE and some different places that can help you, you know, walk through. There may be other nonprofits in your area that'll help you do those things that have experts on staff. I know I'm in Ohio. Angela's in Ohio. The Secretary of State of Ohio is actually super straightforward and self-explanatory. The first time I ever did, I was actually on the phone with them. I'm like, okay, what do I click? What do I do? And they walked me through all of it. But I have heard some horror stories from other states that is a lot more difficult. So when I'm saying it wasn't hard, I'm saying for the Secretary of State in Ohio, it was actually pretty simple. A few of the other states seems to be a little more complicated. But I would start with, if you don't have any dollars, I would start with looking at SCORE or some other places that have experts that volunteer that kind of do it pro bono, and even calling your own Secretary of State, because like I said, the first time, that's who walked me through it.
Yes, and your Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Never forget and never underestimate the value of the Chamber of Commerce in your local area. They're super helpful. And again, it's the same thing with the networking and talking to your local favorite state insurance agent. I don't even like insurance agents that much, but I sound like I'm supporting them today. But they're just a wealth of information.
They really are.
They're in their service to help people. They're in their service to really protect you, help you protect yourself. And so I appreciate the service that they render. But
well, and I think it's like anything else. A lot of, you know, specific industries get bad names. Like attorneys get a bad name for being sleazy. My attorney is definitely not. You know, he's the most moral person that I've ever met. But, you know, sometimes some of these industries kind of get bad names because, you know, there's bad eggs in every dozen, I guess. But no, I mean, I think it's important to kind of mention. So step number one, I would say, for getting your business foundation, you know, firm and solid the way that you need it to be, is to make sure that you establish a business entity. I would definitely, in my opinion, that's number one. Before you do anything else, you need to do that, because that's from day one, separating it from your personal, you know, assets and liabilities. So that would be my number one. I don't know. Would that be your number one too?
I might start with, like, what am I going to be in business for? Like, who is my customer? I might even go back a step, but because in order to do that, you have to have a name and you have to do all the other things. And I wish I had some advice on identifying my market and how my offering fits my market and understanding all of that before I picked a name.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think that for me, in my mind, that's one of those things, like what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because, you know, when you're sitting and you're figuring out your target audience, that changes a lot typically from when somebody first starts. I've rarely seen it stay the same.
No,
from where they first start, because you kind of hone in on not only your skills, but what the needs are You can always go back and do a name change. It could be complicated or whatever, but you can also, one thing I've done in the past is add a DBA. If you've got a good solid, there was a reason typically you pick that name to begin with. And if it's a good solid structure of a name, you can always add a DBA. Again, in the state of Ohio, that's only a $25 fee to add a DBA, which is doing business as, if you decide to come up with a specific name that you want to be known as. So, I mean, I see what you're saying. I think it's one of those things that's, I could see it both ways. I think the only reason that me personally would probably say business structure first is if you're sitting and doing all those things, you may end up needing help outside, especially if you're paying dollars. From the time you establish your entity, that starts to be a business expense and changes kind of tax structure and all that kind of stuff. I'm always trying to figure out how to save a buck. So that's how my brain works, and to make a buck. I'm always trying to figure out how to save a buck and to make a buck. Mm-hmm. But I do understand what you're saying, because you also want to think about why you're getting in business in the first place, because I've helped start lots of businesses with people. And I can tell you one hard, fast rule that I will pull out and not want to be involved at all is if the answer to the reason that you're getting in business is to make money.
Oh, yeah.
Because yes, we all need to make money in business. And I get that. And if that's a reason that you want to make some money somewhere in the world of it, fine. If that is the reason, and I ask you again, that's the reason, you can't give me another reason, you're not ready to start a business, because I can promise you're going to be very upset very quick. Unless you're one of the lucky lottery winners that somehow hits the ground running and makes the dollars right away, you're typically not going to for a while. And I see a lot of people that have that as their reasons fall on their face very quickly and end up, wasting a lot of time and money. And, it's actually disheartening when they could have figured out something that they loved, a passion, right? Something that, you want something deeper than, hey, I want to make money. That should just be kind of the icing on the cake.
If you build it, they will come, right? Like If you've built a good service organization, if you are delivering a good product, the money will come with it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So I think that I love that. I think you could go both ways on that one, but I do understand why you're saying that. I would say for me, this is where it really gets hard for me. I can't decide. I actually would say even on an attorney and an accountant / bookkeeper, which I started out with just an accountant, but now I have an accountant and a bookkeeper because my stuff's complicated. But I would say that is even. I can't decide which one is more important. I can tell you that I made the mistake early on of trying to do my own books the first year, and that was the most expensive fix that I've ever had to pay. To pay an accountant to forensically go back and through an entire year where you kept the books, wink, wink, and really your books for me, it was like a glorified check register, because I am not an accountant by any stretch of the imagination. That was a very expensive lesson for me. And I think for me, that is even with the need to be able to protect myself legally. I don't know. What about you?
I'm a little more number savvy maybe than you are. So 100%. I would go legal every day before accountant. But I also don't have, you have a lot more coming in and going out, and I'm very much online service, right? Yeah. But buy my product online. The accounting is pretty straightforward at this point.
It's employees is where it gets super hard. I have two businesses.
I would hire payroll, right? So there's different ones. There's even fractional accountants that are available. Yeah. I would hire out payroll if I was going to bring on employees. Right now, I just contract people to do different parts. That's a good way to, that's what I did. That's what I still have people that I contract in for certain things. Not everybody I have as an employee, but I do have employees for 2 of my businesses too. But, that's where it starts to get, for me, especially super complicated, because I don't like you love the fine details and stuff. That's where I'm like, I just want 30,000 foot view. And there's no such thing as 30,000 foot view when you're dealing with accounting, when you're dealing with, taxes,
especially like withholding and all the things. There's taxes. I didn't even realize all the taxes that existed before I had employees. And I'm like, wait, so I pay the employees, and then I pay taxes because I pay the employees, but then I pay taxes because I sold this over here. But then they pay taxes.
You pay that insurance tax for having an employee for their unemployment potential.
So you're sitting there like adding up all the times they're taxing you for that one person, and it's like, it's kind of one of those things that I tell people. If you can hire in another company, if you're not the type of business that needs employees, like if I had it to do over with Reset specifically, I can't get by with my cafe because obviously those have to be W-2 employees. But if I had it to do over with Reset, because it's too late now, I'm already on the radar, so there's no way. Like I'm on the radar, I've already had employees. It's a lot harder to go backwards and go only contractors. It is. My accountant has I don't know, maybe there's accountants be like, no, it's not, but my accountant has told me that it's going to be hard to go backwards on some of the things. But
if you're going to do it during COVID's the time.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Because
maybe that's something to bring out with him again. But I have.
The question is,
three.
Right, we have this conversation frequently because we move people from contract to employee and back, even in large corporations. Do you control their location? And do you control their hours? So if you say, here is the project, deliver it, they can be a contractor. If you say you must show up from 8 to 5 and sit at this desk, then they're an employee. So for example, at the vault, they must be there to serve coffee from 12 to 4, right? Or whatever your hours are. They have to be there. That's clearly an employee. If someone is delivering some sort of project deliverable, as long as it's done by Friday at noon, you don't care if he crashes the night before or if he gets it done on Monday and takes the whole week off.
So where I think my accountant said it started to get iffy is I have 2 people that are local. They're not put on hours still, but because they come, they use my equipment. I don't remember. Something about using my equipment and showing up at my location that would make it kind of iffy. Even though I don't say.
The question is, do you require it?
No, I don't require it. It's up to them. They can work for them anywhere. But, they show up, and that was where he was concerned with going backwards. But I don't know. I think it's one of those things. A lot of that kind of stuff is going to also depend on your own accountants, how comfortable they are with taking a risk on something.
Defending decisions. Yeah,
exactly. So, he may be a little more like, it's not even worth this little bit over here to even worry about it. I don't know. Again, I think that's why it's important to trust who you're talking, because I take his word for it. Yeah, there's probably a bunch of ways to do it, but he says, this is the way we're going to do it. I'm like, okay, so that's what we do. But, I do think that is, again, why it's important to have somebody that is a specialist in that industry, because I don't know. You know what I mean? And what I would consider, worth the risk or not worth the risk may be different than him, because he's going to know a lot more of that full picture than I'm going to with my limited experience with that world. And I think that's why it's so important to think about, as you're building your foundation. I don't think we put enough emphasis on how important that is. Like the foundation, right? Like, see, again, I always use a house analogy because it's easy to use that, but it's like, even when you buy a house, you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cute, it's pretty, look at the neighborhood, and oh my gosh, look at those windows. I am not good at going and checking the foundation. Now my husband, that's the stuff that he's going and looking at. He's over there looking at stuff that I'm not looking at, right? I'm like looking, oh my gosh, look, this is perfect. This is perfect. And he's over there. How did they backfill around the fountain? Like, what did they use? Like, he's asking the questions because he's built houses in the past too, that I would never think to even ask, because I'm like, oh my gosh, it looks perfect. Enough room, open floor plan. Yes. And I think it's important to think about that, because no matter how beautiful the house is, no matter how great the neighborhood is, no matter how many, natural light windows there are, if that foundation isn't properly set, the house is going to crumble. You're going to be very upset. The windows that you love so much are going to break. All kinds of things are going to happen, right? And it's the same thing within our business. If our business foundation is not structured properly, it is a whole lot harder to try to fix that once you're making tons of money and you're busy and you have all the things going on to try to go back and fix it. Just the same thing with a house foundation. Foundations a lot of times can't be fixed. They're a lot cheaper to fix as you're building it than it is to go backwards and fix something that was never put in right to begin with, though. And I think that's why I think this show is one of the more important shows that we do, just because I made mistakes early on. That was way more expensive to go back and go, oh, this needed to be done like this, and I know we talk about all the time that we get into business because of one or two things that we do amazingly, and it definitely doesn't mean that we do all the things amazingly. And that's usually where you find out, is where something's not quite lining up right.
Yes.
Yes.
There's no question there.
So
you didn't give me a nice segue to pop off.
Okay, well, I can give you a segue. So I can give you a segue. As far as I've shared a couple of things, like I did not do a good job at going ahead and having a bookkeeper do my stuff. It cost me money to go backwards. I also didn't retain an attorney at the very beginning. I luckily didn't get in big trouble on that one. But those were two things that when I first started my business, I had no dollars. So I was like, well, how do I hire people with no dollars? So, in retrospect, if I could go back, I think I would have saved and had a budget ready before I incorporated my business to go ahead and do those things. But as they say, hindsight's 20/20, and most of us, unless we've been there, done that, fell on our face, and have learned that lesson, we don't think about it ahead of time. So the good news is, if nothing's happened, you can go back and look at each of these foundational pieces and say, okay, where am I at on this? Where am I at on this? And kind of check in with yourself. Are there some areas, kind of looking back when you first started, that you wished you would have done a little differently?
It's so funny. Thank you for that. Was a perfect lead in, because I guess my question was, how much money do you think for a solopreneur to get started, should they have budget for getting started? Because we've heard with the stimulus package that came out, the statistics were significant in the number of people who launched businesses, people who thought about launching businesses but hadn't, because they just didn't even have enough money to file the LLC, right? Yeah. But again, that's just filing the LLC and getting yourself a logo on a website, and boom, that's $1,000, and you haven't even done anything yet. How much money should we have in the bank, really, if we were thinking about launching a business successfully as a solopreneur?
I think a lot of that goes into what industry you're in.
Okay.
Number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, is this your full-time gig, or is it like a side hustle? Because I know one of my more popular classes that I've ever taught, and I get called to teach this on a regular basis because people want to know, is it's called How to Start a Business with No Working Capital. Why is it called that? Because you can. Now, that being said, disclaimer, doesn't mean you always should. It depends on a whole lot of things. And, one of those is, are you supporting yourself and your family with this? You know what I mean? What type of industry is it? Because when I say that, that means, can I start a business freelancing, and start making some money, take that money, put it to the side, put it, into effect to be able to get my LLC, get my attorney, get my bookkeeper, get the things? Yeah, you can. You can start it with no working capital and, just bootstrap your way. I did. So I know it can be done. I had no dollars, no dollars. So I know it can be done. That doesn't mean it's always the best way. I also had kind of some fallback on, I wasn't the only income in my household at the time. I did have savings for stuff that I needed to get as I, went along. So there was some precursors to that. But that being said, you can start a business without having a bunch of capital sitting there, but it doesn't mean you always should. I think, again, if you're doing like the whole freelancer thing, or doing something that's like digitally based where you don't have a lot of overhead, what you should have on hand is obviously way less than if you, manufacturing. If you start a manufacturing company, that's going to be very expensive because you need lots of things, right?
Oh, you have to have tons of capital then.
That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it very much depends on what industry are we looking at. If you're doing something digitally where you don't have to have anything but a computer, maybe you already have it, you know what I mean? The numbers are going to look different. Also, if you're starting some kind of side hustle, if you're working your 9 to 5 or whatever shift you're on, and you just want to start some stuff at the side, again, you can start it with no money. So maybe you're, during the day you're working manufacturing, but then in the evening you decided to start learning how to code websites, and you get on a site like Upwork or Fiverr, and you're doing that freelance 1099, right? Freelance for the time being. And you're taking those dollars and putting it towards starting something of your very own as a more permanent, quote unquote, side hustle, or as a full blown business to work yourself out of your job. There are ways to do that, and, a lot of times you can do that without buying anything, because a lot of the things you can do a lot of things with things you already have. Most people have a laptop or a computer. There's things that you can do from your phone. There's lots of like side hustles and things that you can start, even if it's not something that you want to do forever. If it's something that gets more income coming in through the door, where you could put it into an account that you save to go toward what you want to do. I think it just depends on, to answer your question, it just depends on a whole lot of things. But I do, like a hard, fast 30,000 foot view without knowing anybody's industry. I use the same kind of rules that a lot of people use when they're using a normal budget, right? So, 6 months to a year of monthly expenses sitting in a bank account, I think is a good, hard, fast rule. And that needs to be duplicated. If you're the sole provider or you're half provider, like you've got it worked out where you have to pay a certain amount of your own personal expenses, that it needs to be separate. That plan needs to be separate than your business expenses. So, I think that's number one. And number two, budgeting in to say, okay, well, maybe I don't have the dollars to retain a $2,000, $3,000 attorney, but can I call, you mentioned the chamber, can I call my local chambers or somebody that's willing to be somebody to look over my documents? And then I can write my own documents, but they look it over for a smaller fee, just to make sure. Because so you're doing the bulk of the work, right? So it's not spending hours, they're not spending hours there, they're spending minutes, looking over things and getting it the way that it's supposed to be. There's ways to kind of structure that, figure out what that would cost, and then have that a line item on savings. So attorney, same thing with a bookkeeper. What's the smallest bookkeeping package I can get? Look over it, quarterly or monthly or whatever. There are smaller packages, and a lot of people will work with you if kind of they know where your budget is. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but.
Yeah, it does. To your point, it was really well answered, because you do have to think about what your personal expenses are versus the budget. My question really was specifically, what's the budget that you want for your business to get started? Yeah. But if this is going to be a solo gig, as in your only source of income, you really do need to plan on 12 months of less than ideal income. Maybe you'll get lucky, and maybe you already have a network, because that happens as well. Mm-hmm. But
you're not going to be sad you have money saved up for 12 months either. So
no, 12 to 24 months before you start turning a profit is not an abnormal situation to be in. So,
and I say 6 to 12 typically with business, because it's, especially when you're first starting out, it's going to be hard to make those dollars. So again, going back to that whole freelance thing, mm-hmm. Working freelance, taking those dollars and putting it into kind of a fallback account, I think is a good idea to be able to have something to fall back on, right? Because even when you start making money, there is a lot of times where customers and clients are slower to pay than you need them to be. Even if they don't go to the point of becoming quote unquote delinquent, they may be a little slower than you would love. So cash flow ends up being kind of a thing. So having that money sitting there where you can kind of cover your expenses that needs to be paid while you're waiting on a payment to come in, is a great idea. I have one client in particular. I have my system set up on a monthly, net 30, right? Like most people do. But this client their standard is 45 days. So, and it depends on the size of the company. 45 days when you get up higher is not so unheard of. And in a certain industry, 45 days.
We're 90.
So you're all
90.
So even bigger
90.
companies are 90. Yeah. And honestly, I had another client, this has been 2 years ago, they were on a 90. So
Yeah.
it just depends on what you have. So you have to sit there and think, because your expenses are going to come every month, no matter what. But it's a big difference on if you're getting paid every 30 days, if you're getting paid 45 and then 90. So you have to kind of think that in mind when you're taking on these contracts, because, you know, it doesn't make sense to change your entire setup every time you get on a client that's going to have a different pay schedule. So that there again, I always think it's a good idea. I always say minimum of 6 months, 6 to 12. If you can do more than that, great. But realistically, for a lot of super small businesses and entrepreneurs, that 6 to 12 months is usually about what is a doable amount.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
for sure.
yeah. And I mean, I think another point to talk about foundational pieces is kind of what you were saying anyway, at the beginning, is thinking about why you want to do it, what you want to do, because even if it does change, and a lot of times it will a little bit, it'll be tweaked, you want to make sure that you know what direction you're going.
Well, that's true. So, I mean, listen, last week, Chanel told us that she was also going to do her Friday face.
Mm-hmm.
That's a completely different business for her, right? So, yes, the same person is doing that because she enjoys her hustle, but she's going to run that as two completely separate businesses. She has her Airbnb and she has her Friday face. And I think that's important to understand that while the same person is representing, and it is inclusive and authentic to who she is for sure, beautiful and chasing money, like it's a power combo, but not chasing money for the sake of it, but because she really enjoys what she's presenting, right? So, but she's managing those as two separate businesses. So understanding how that ties in as well is very important.
Absolutely. Well, and I think a lot of times you have to figure out how to segment things off. Again, even if it's just doing a DBA, and your attorney and or accountant can tell you when the right moment is to kind of break that off into its own separate entity. But I've always started, well, I've almost always started something new under my own first umbrella, if it kind of fit in the same world, and then broke it off later. Once I figured out, number one, if it is something I even want to do, because I don't want to go through the hassle of starting this whole other business to do it for a month and be like, I hate this. I absolutely hate this.
So that's fair. Like creatively efficient is really my umbrella name for all the things that I love to do, right? Because at the end of the day, the story is that one, helping others help themselves. And how do you do that in the most efficient manner? And the creative part is that for me, understanding rules is very important, and understanding how to break the rules is even more important. But you have to know the rules and all the details in order to stretch everything. And I think that's where the creativity comes in, right? But that mindset, that basic thinking structure, it applies to any field you want to apply it to. Absolutely. And so then so to your point, creatively efficient for me is the umbrella.
Well, I think it's good to have that, little bit of time if you're starting something new. I always start out like a campaign, kind of like a beta, to be like, hey, this is something new I'm going to do. Just see what the interest is, because, it would stink to spend, and I've seen people do this, they spend so much time on something new and get it all ready without even trying to figure out if it's something people want anyway, throw it out there and it's like,
I was guilty in my first business.
Oh, it happens. I mean, it really, really does. And it's, and sometimes we get into it because we're kind of interested. I know I had a boutique for a hot minute. I had it for 2 years. Luckily I was able to sell that boutique, but I learned a lot about what I suck at.
I learned a lot about what I don't like.
And yeah.
I like to go to farmers markets. I really loathe sitting and running a booth at the farmers market. And I love the people. I love the vibe. I don't know. I don't like being on the other side.
I mean, it's
and
a lot
other people love it.
dead
Other
time.
people love it. Yeah. Yeah. And as the go getter gadget person, that was hard. Sitting in the same 10 by 10, that was hard.
Yeah, I did a few shows and farmers markets in the past because we've got the farm,
Right.
and then I've got my wellness company that we do like different tinctures and herbs and all this stuff. So I know what you're saying. It was like a love-hate thing for me. Like I loved getting it ready and growing it and making the things, and I was excited to bring it to people, and I was excited to hear their stories. But like you just said, sitting there for what felt like my entire life, because I do not sit still well, was excruciatingly painful.
Shoot me in the head. It was painful. It was painful. And I wasn't able to make a show, and I asked a girlfriend to sit in for me. She's like, oh, everyone was so delightful. And like, she used all these wonderful, glowing terms. And I'm like, did we go to the same event? Are you sure you went to the same place? She loved it. She loves doing that. And I just didn't love it.
Well, I think that's a big part of thinking about your foundational pieces, because, is this something that you're going to be okay with doing, every day or once a week or whatever your planned structure is? Like, is this going to be something that you're okay with? Or is it something that you're going to need to bring in somebody else? Because that needs to go into your plan, into your budget, into, maybe a partnership if that's what you decide to do. Because, yeah, you could do something that you don't like for a while, but most of us don't want to do things that we don't like for very long. And, you may be thinking, well, I work a job right now and I hate it. But you're doing it because you don't have anything else to do, probably. You know what I mean? You have to pay your bills. You have to eat. So you're going for that reason. But if you had something else that still covered those needs that you love to do, I'd say you'd probably jump on it. And I think it's, if you're starting something of your very own, again, we mentioned earlier, don't do it just for the sake of money, because it doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you're miserable, you're not going to want to do it forever.
Right.
And that was me in the boutique.
Well, but I think that's the channel that we have to really understand. I think we talked about this early, maybe at the end of last season, a point about how can you be curious? How can you learn? How can you put yourself in a situation where you're experiencing all these different things so you don't build your business on a model that you don't love? Because really, now, don't get me wrong, there will always be activities that we must do, that we must learn, that we at minimum need to be exposed to, that we're not going to love. And we still have to do them. But that shouldn't be the majority of your business, right? So understanding that, making sure that that's a good portion of it before you go into your business is built on the wisdom and experience of all the things you've collected through your life. And that's where it's good to have a sounding board or a network, or who's your audience, who is in that audience that you're going to talk to that'll give you some feedback about the idea that you're talking about, trying to make money or make a living off of. Getting that feedback and doing a little bit of audience and market research as you're building the foundation of your business before you just dump a bunch of money into it is really valuable. Because if your entire income is based on going to the farmers markets and you don't like sitting in a booth in the farmers market, you can have all the fun in the world making tinctures, but if somebody doesn't buy it, you're not making any money.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of times people can tell that you don't really love it. You know what I mean? Because people, it's that energy, right? Think about somebody that's got like a great energy, and it's like, you don't know what it is that they have at this point, but you want to find out more about it because it's their energy. But if you're sitting there like, I don't want to be here, even if you're trying to put on that fake smile, they can tell.
Yes. Yep.
So I think that's important. I mean, and a lot of these things that we talk about is stuff that obviously we've been there, done that. And I don't know with some of it that somebody could have told me. I don't know that if somebody would be like, you don't want to start a boutique, I would have been like, watch me. I started the boutique because the opportunity presented itself for me to buy out this boutique, and financially it made sense. Where my mistake was not doing what I initially had planned to do, which is buy the inventory, create a site, and sell it off and triple my money. I did do that. Bought it, made the website, tripled my money. But Maria didn't stop there. I'm like, oh, this was easy, right? This was so easy. So I decided to start this whole boutique, but I'm not, like, I like a cute outfit, whatever. I definitely wouldn't consider myself fashionista because I don't care what's in style. I buy something because I like it. I don't care if somebody says it's in style or out of style or whatever. I actually do not care. I don't like shopping. I absolutely hate shopping. And one thing I didn't realize is in the boutique world, that's pretty much all you do. You have to shop all day long for the things that you're going to put in your store. I hate shopping. So there were so many reasons that I should not have done this, that I was focused on, oh, I can make money from this. And, from an investment standpoint, that short-term thing was a good investment. But turning it into a business was a terrible idea because my heart wasn't in it. I didn't have a passion for the industry. I actually had a passion for nothing that was involved in that. I ended up doing it because I was able to make good money doing it. So, I think, saying that, I just want to kind of point that out there. That's when I say doing something for the sake of the money, it doesn't work. It's because it just doesn't work. Because, I've sold it to somebody else. They were able to do more than I was able to do with it. I was killing myself and I was doing decent, but I wasn't doing it to its not even close, not even half potential, because my heart wasn't in it, because I don't know that industry well. I didn't care about that industry well. And I always say that the only reason it did as good as it did is because I know sales and marketing. But that there's still a limit to that, right? And so when you get started in something, if you only know like a piece of it, you need to think about, really doing some research on what all it takes to run that full business in that industry. I didn't think it that way through, that far through. I did not. I wasn't thinking about the fact that, oh, you're gonna have to shop every day for the rest of your life. Because if somebody would have like painted that picture for me, be like, you're gonna have to shop every day, I would be like, I'm out. Out.
Right. You have to sit every Saturday at a farmer's market when you could be riding your bike and training.
Yep.
Then it didn't end up working for me, right?
So like pro and con list. I mean, I think sometimes it's as simple as that. Like think about the worst parts of it. Like, because I think when we get excited about something, we think about the best parts. Like, because I did, I thought about the best parts. I'm like, oh, the boutique will be so cute. I'll be able to decorate, because I do like decorating. I'll be able to decorate it so cute, and I got it all set up and I was so excited about it. That it was like the day-to-day things that had to happen. I was interested 0%. I was only excited about setting it up, and there's a lot of industries that's the part that I like. And that, when I am able to do consulting, that's what I get to do. I'm able to kind of get that out of the system.
You would be like a good event coordinator. You just set it up.
Yeah, that's what I like to do. I like to set it up and then everybody gets, to working and do all the things. I love that. That's exciting for me. But, I think that when you're sitting and thinking about a business you're going to start, write down all the things that make you excited, because that's great, because that's your passion, that's your why. But then really research the industry, talk to other people that are in the industry. A lot of times if they're hyper local, they're probably aren't going to be as forthcoming as if you get somebody online, join some groups or whatever and discuss in there. So like, what are the worst parts or the parts that you don't like about your job? Because you'll find out really quick what those are and kind of look at those, and are those things that you're okay with? Because like you mentioned, Angela, there's almost always, well, there are always, I'm not going to say almost, there are always aspects of everything that's going to be like, I don't like this part, which is fine, but it should be a good balance.
Really, like I was thinking about this. For example, if we remember, we have a human tendency, despite the ability for us to complain, we have a human tendency to remember the positive and let the negative slip away. Trust me, no second baby would ever be born, right? Exactly. Like you only remember the cute, cuddly, warm. You don't remember getting up in the middle of the night and changing diapers and everything else, right? We are genetically programmed to remember those warm feelings and those thankfulness. And
if there's a balance of both. I'm thinking of some stuff right now that I feel like was only bad experiences that, like, and I mean, I've kind of mentioned this. I got involved with a public company. It's been 3 years ago now. I actually got to the point that I stopped investing in anything. I didn't want to look at crypto. I didn't want to look at my investments. It was like investment world I was like blinded from it because it was such a bad experience. It was almost like PTSD. I mean, it was like, I wanted nothing to do with that world. Anything that reminded me of the world, I was like, absolutely not. Because back to that, I'm glad I had an attorney thing. There was some stuff that went down, and you can Google it. I'm not even going to sit and go over it on here, but it was like the worst experience of my life. So that being said, that there are some stuff that I can think of that I don't remember the good parts, because there may have been a good part here or there, but all I remember is complete terror.
Well, there is trauma. That is true statement.
Yes.
So, but I think it's a challenge, because even if they say what they don't like, people are hesitant to voice that in a professional setting.
Yeah.
And what you like and what I like are typically very different things, right? And certainly when we start talking to Chanel, we have different associations again of what we like and don't like. And that's what makes the world go round. And I love that about people and about the ability to work with people. But it's a challenge to like ask someone else what they don't like and try to empathize that into what it would be for yourself.
Well, and I think the only way to do that is to get lots of opinions on stuff, just to say, what are some pros and cons of this industry that you've experienced from your own life? And I think it's one of those things that, it may not be the exact same for every person, but a lot of times within industry, you'll see common threads. Like, for example, I've got some clients in the medical industry. I can guarantee you one of the things that they all have in common is that the ones that accept insurance absolutely hate dealing with insurance companies across the board. It doesn't matter what part of the medical world they're in, they all say the same thing. I can guarantee you that one will be on the list. So some of them may differ between people's personalities, personal experiences, location, all the things, specific niche industries. But I think there's some things that's going to be something that is going to be above and beyond. Like I mentioned, boutique shopping is par for the course. Shopping, you're going to have to be a shopper or hire a shopper. Mm-hmm. One of those two things. The shopping is a part of it. Right. And, that would have been a hard, fast no for me, because I do not like to shop.
Right.
Don't. So, I mean, I think it's good to get those opinions, but much to your point, Angel, I do want people to think about, that doesn't mean that everybody's opinions should be your opinions, but it gives you, that saying goes, food for thought. It gives you things to think about and to say, okay, well, if this would be the case for me, would I be okay with that? Am I willing to risk starting this business, if this is a potential, if this is a possibility? And my rule for myself is I don't risk what I can't afford to lose, and because I have to take risks every day. I take risks with every business I start. I take risks every day with clients. There's always risks. There's risks involved with everything. But my rule with myself is I try not to risk what I can't afford to lose. I didn't give you a lead in.
You're just tossing them right over here today. So, I mean, I agree, right? Like, I feel maybe it's that Midwestern, right? We have two Ohio girls here today, but some people will say the greater the risk, the greater the reward. But I also feel, as a mother, right, as a person who is the primary breadwinner in the household, if I can't risk it, I can't put my family out into that level of risk. And I guess I also always have a safety risk. So for me, I like working in the corporate world and the manufacturing and the large things. So for me, that's important. So my risk reward is different, I think, assessment of what I'm willing to take under my hat than maybe somebody else is.
No, and I agree with that. And I think, again, it kind of look at your own personal life, and say, okay, well, what is it that I would be okay with? Can I go, can I leave my job, and can I go, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months without pulling in a paycheck? Is there, do I have that in savings for my personal savings? Do I have that budget saved up for my business, that if I don't get invoices paid on a regular basis, that my business isn't dead in the water. I think for everybody's life, that's going to look a little different. Honestly, it's the same as like when you invest. Like when you invest, I use that same rule. I don't invest what I can't afford to lose, because the stock market is volatile. You know what I mean? I don't risk what I can't afford to lose, especially with newer things like crypto and stuff like that, which we can talk about that all day long. But that's been my hard, fast rule for myself, because like you mentioned, I have kids, I have a family, and I think that goes back to a lot of the foundational pieces that we were talking about having an attorney, having a bookkeeper, having the accountant that files my taxes, having insurance that, covers me if something was to happen. Those are things that I have in place because I can't risk not having them in place.
Right.
I can't risk being sued and, potentially losing everything. I don't want to risk things that, and then that was another reason, like setting it up with a separate LLC for my personal expenses, because it would suck. It would break my heart if somebody sued me and I lost one or all of my businesses. Completely break my heart. It would, because I have scratched my way from completely having no dollars to be able to do that. But I could lose them. I would be sad, but I could lose it, because I could do it again, right? But my personal assets are separated because I can't afford to lose them.
Yeah. Your children can't afford to. It's not fair.
Yep.
So I just wanted to summarize really quickly. If you're looking for some of the things that we talk about, you can find us in our Facebook group, Reset Business Consulting, right?
That's a page. Well, we are actually... There's also a page, Business Acceleration Playbook, Facebook page. We also have a Business Acceleration Playbook group that we haven't really marketed out much, but we need to start getting that out there, because I would really love to have some of these in-depth conversations in the group and be able to market some of the shows and stuff that we got going on the page. So this has been we've been kind of gearing up to kind of do more and more with Business Acceleration Playbook. But we would love it if you would share if you're watching this in the replay, #replay, and we will be back again next Tuesday at 1 p.m.
Yep, sounds great. Okay,
all right.
Thanks, Maria.
Thank you.
Talk
Bye.
to you soon. Bye.